Hey everybody, this is the Unsmooth Criminal, and I'm here with a part one, because this is a great idea and I need to get this out there. But I'm going to do, and I'm putting a poll up every other day after I upload videos, the next day after I upload videos, on my community tab for you guys to vote for what is the next one that's going to come out. So tomorrow, probably early morning Pacific Standard Time, which is California time if you guys are in the European area. You look at California Standard Time or California time, and that's probably early in the morning for then, so it's probably going to be later in the day for you guys. I'm going to be uploading a poll, and I'm going to try to make sure that's on a regular schedule so I can get my bearings on the stories, because I'm going to have a max of 3 stories that I'm doing at that moment. And when I'm done with one of those stories, I'll interchange it with something different. But I need to get this idea out because I've been sitting on it. Killer Grimlock on the Discord. Really great guy. I suggest you go talk to him on Discord. Really great guy. He's an admin on my Discord. So if you have any issues with typing into a chat or just seeing a chat, like if the Courtyard's messing up for you somehow, don't know how it should be able to be accessed by anybody. But if the Courtyard's messing up for you, message him. He'll help you. And let's get into this. So I need to do a little bit of world building. So if anybody, I do not own any of the games that I'll mention in this. I do not own any of the animes that I'll mention in this, because I do reference a lot of animes, and I'll mention when it's an anime and when it's a game. And I do reference a lot of games. So like the Doomslayer one, and that's on the back burner for right now. Right now it's currently Myst, Vampire, and Cursed Voices. You guys voted for Vampire, so I'm going to get Vampire out there. But I need to do a bit of backstory for this, and hopefully I remember this backstory, because I honestly like this game. I honestly would like to finish this one, so if you guys... And I will put a poll I will add a poll for back burner story. If people want a back burner story, I'm going to have to kick off something from the list. So, yeah. So we start in a world, and this is the My Hero world, but instead of normal quirks, they have these things called Aether abilities. And if you don't know what Aether is from a game called Dauntless, and it's the life essence of the entire planet. So you have behemoths, because there are going to be behemoths in the story, and you have humans. Humans can infuse Aether and the abilities of behemoths into weapons to fight the behemoths off. So the floating island, this is in the Dauntless game, the floating islands that they live on do not break, crumble, and fall apart, because the world has shattered and they're floating islands that are being held together barely by Aether. So this planet's going to be flourishing with Aether. Everywhere you can find Aether. Behemoths are still consuming the Aether, but there's not enough behemoths yet, because it's going to be later in the future that the world goes kablooey in the world of Dauntless you get. But there's not enough Aether degradation to split the world to as bad as in Dauntless. So we're in Japan, and there's only a few families that have the know-how and the ability to mold Aether enough to infuse weapons with parts of monsters or behemoths, you want to call them. And they're known as the Big Four families. And one of those families is the Midoriya family. But nobody knows them as a Big Four family, because everybody in the common knows the Big Three families, not the 4. Only the top 10 heroes/slayers know of the 4th family. because their weapons are so expensive, because they're so good and well crafted. All the armor that they make is custom order armor, and they're specialized in heavy weaponry. So if you've ever played Dauntless, I'm counting the strikers, the axe, and the hammers as heavy weaponry. And if you guys know anything about the behemoths, you don't want to be hitting behemoths with a hollow tin and aluminum mallet. No. You want to be hitting them with something heavy and thick so I can survive the hit. So I'm counting the strikers as a heavy weapon. That's my little reasoning. Then one of the other families is known for their better weapons. Most of their swords, war pikes, chain blades, repeaters. They make all the weapons, but they're mostly known for those, and they're mostly known for the light weaponry and the affordability of the weapons for the average person just to help defend themselves. Because pretty much everybody has at least a weapon, but they're not allowed to use it out in public unless it's a dire situation. The Slayers/heroes, and I'm going to be counting them as heroes, have a license to carry them on them and show them out in public 24/7. So we go to 6 months before canon. Hisashi Midoriya never left. Inko Midoriya is a housewife. And Hisashi just came back from a business transaction. He goes into town. He meets with the top 10 heroes that are wanting to buy either a axe, hammer, or anything. Asking them for materials, the rare materials. And asking them to find out what they want and what they can pay for. And the Midoriya family has so much leverage in this market that he can decline a weapon to manufacture a weapon and still be good for a few years. But he doesn't like declining weapons because he feels that the more behemoths get thoroughly demolished, the safer they are. And one of the process for creating these weapons is to take the essence of the behemoths, so Umbral, Radiant, Terran, Shock, Flame, Ice, and Neutral, and infusing them into the weapons. So one day, Izumi, yes, her name's going to be Izumi, walks into the workshop and sees her dad and asks to help. And he says, sure, hand him the container of Umbral Essence. And if anybody knows what the Umbral Orbs are, that's literally what the essence is, just in liquid form. So she walks over with this big jar of Umbral Essence, and it's heavy. These aren't light, these are heavy jars full of it. And she puts it down, and her father is big, like Endeavor and All Might big. But she's gonna be small, just saying. She's gonna be scrappy. No. And no one has ever tried to consume or use any of the essence for her genetic mutations to either improve a human body or to affect a human body. So it's completely undiscovered and not researched at all. But he's currently sharpening the weapon, and he accidentally knocks the jar. And Izumi's currently standing right next to the jar. He knocks the jar, and she tries to catch it. And she catches it just past the tipping point, so some of it gets on her. Some of the Umbral Essence gets on her. and it got in her right eye. So she starts screaming in pain because it hurts. Getting a foreign object in your eye freaking hurts. Eyelashes are uncomfortable. Some dust is uncomfortable. Your eye getting touched is uncomfortable. But getting a fluid in your eye hurts. Water, not so much. Eye drops feels weird. But unknown substances, because we don't know what the umbral essence is made out of, so I'm just going to say it's like lemons and limes. Sour. And no one knows that because no one's tried to drink or eat it. And her eye goes from perfectly bright purple bluish, her right eye, because she had heterochromacy. That's going to be important. She had heterochromacy, to completely bleach white. And she's still screaming, so they call their family doctor, because they have one on the premise, because sometimes Hisashi cuts himself and he needs to be rushed to the doctor. So they rush her and call him, saying that there was an accident, that he needs to keep an eye on their daughter for a little bit. So she's currently in the doctor's office, which is a little bit closer to the town. That's also important. It's a little closer to the town. And when he gets back home, Inko's worried for Izumi, and Hisashi's worried for her. So he's like, I need to finish this, because this is going to be made for her. So he finishes up what he was working on. And he finally is like, okay, I need to infuse the essence into it. And he takes a bit of Izumi's blood, because he asked his doctor to take a little bit of her blood because he wants to try something. So he takes a little bit of her blood and pours it onto the axe while heating it, and then starts to pour the umbral essence onto the axe. So we get a umbral weapon. Anybody knows what the umbral Riftstalker axe is? I forget the name of it, but it's literally that axe. It's feeling from just a normal metal axe to something so light you could throw it through a wall at full strength. And he's like, what just happened to it? It went from heavy to a normal axe to super light. And he doesn't know what happened to it. So he hangs it up and he sees that the hooks are bending under its weight. And it's like, what? So he puts it on the ground and he's like, okay, I need a place to hide this. Because if she knows about this, she's going to want to lift it. I don't know if it's going to be heavy for her. So he gets his newest case that he was going to put it in anyway. And he finds his floor safe. And he takes out his old repeaters that he used to use for hunting. Because he used to be a slayer. A legal slayer. And he puts them on the wall where the axe is supposed to be. And he puts the box in this floor safe. And he puts a letter in the mail that's addressed for UA in 2 years. And he emails Nezu, because Nezu knows who he is. Most of the UA staff knows who he is. He emails Nezu saying that there's a letter that's going to be delivered in 2 years. And it's supposed to be hand-delivered to Izumi immediately, because he knows that she's going to be there. And he tells him the situation of Izumi, and that she hasn't woken up yet. We skip a few weeks into the future, and he's been completely distant from everybody, because he normally is, because he's currently crafting something. He was asked to craft a hammer. A radiant hammer for a certain hero that everybody knows named All Might. And everybody chooses a random Slayer name or a themed Slayer name because they have themes. And everybody still has their quirks because the Aether affects people differently. Hizashi has a quirk called Aether Forge. And Inko has a quirk of telekinesis again. But something happened to Izumi when the umbral aether hit her eye, or umbral essence hit her eye. So she wakes up and the doctor immediately calls them saying, she's awake, you need to get down here. And Hizashi accidentally spilled some radiant aether on his arm without noticing. And normally people can't see the aether if it's in a thin quantity. That's also important. So he gets there and she looks at the door and immediately shuts her eyes, saying, that's bright, it's too bright. And the doctor had no issue with her seeing him. So Hizashi's like, what's bright? And Inko runs around the other side and gets her attention on the other side, and she opens up her eyes perfectly fine. And she opens her eyes like there's nothing wrong with her eyes. And she sees a slight, very, very slight glow on the edge of Inko's outline. It's so slight that she barely even noticed it. And she sees two versions of Inko, the normal human Inko, and then a slightly darker Inko with a glowy outline. So she thinks that she's just seeing stuff. And she looks at her father again, and she sees the bright light again. So she shuts her left eye, still sees it, then shuts her right eye and opens her left, and doesn't see it anymore. And she goes, Dad, I think there's something wrong with my eye. And they both notice that her eye was pitch white. And they go, okay, what's wrong? And she goes, I don't know, but I can't see you with my right eye. Or actually, let me re-say this. Something's too bright. I can't see you because I'm blinded in my right eye. And he goes, okay then. How should I do this? So he runs out of the room and he goes to his work area, and he sees that he was messing with some radiant essence. So he gets a little jar and he fills it up with this essence and takes a complete shower, or hosing everything down using highly a super strong cleaner to get everything off of him, so he's completely clean. And he walks in and he pulls out a jar of umbral essence, because he still has a little bit of left over because he got a little bit too much from the Slayer/hero. Then he pulls out a jar of radiant essence and he puts it above her, and she goes, that's okay, I can see that perfectly fine. And then he puts it above the radiant essence and she shuts her eyes. And he goes, okay, so you could see the radiant essence. And everybody's looking at him like, what? That's just water. And he goes, no, this is radiant essence. This is umbral essence. And it looks like black tar. The umbral essence looks like black tar. And they're like, what? And he goes, yeah. Radiant essence has the ability to refract light, or have the ability to cancel out umbral abilities if touched. So I want you to do something, and I want Izumi to agree to this, but I want you to pour a little bit of this in her other eye. And he looks at Izumi and says, this may hurt a lot. And she goes, if it will fix my eyesight, then sure. So he pours just a few drops, and she starts yelling and she passes out. A few minutes later, she wakes up. And she looks at this radiant essence again, and it's less bright. It's still super bright, but it's not blinding bright anymore. And she goes, I can see it, but it hurts to look at. It's not blinding anymore, but it still hurts. And he goes, okay, that's good. Now, that we fix this a little, and both of her eyes now are, one's a faded white, and no, that one's actually best. One's a faded white, and he just put a single drop of it in her eye. It's not a flood like the other one was. So it still hurts like hell, but it doesn't hurt as much as the umbral, which made her pass out for a few days. Actually, more than a week. So after a few more weeks, something shifts in her. And her eye went from blank white to this galaxy-like looking pattern. And they see this shining white little specks of stars in this pitch black universe in her eye. And they're like, wow. And I'll show you a picture later when I get to that. So everybody is looking at her. The doctor is at his place, not near there. It's currently Hisashi and Inko both looking at her. And a number one hero. And this number one hero has a facade that he keeps going all the time. It's All Might. He visits every 5 years. So she's met him before, but she doesn't remember him because he's, in her opinion, a douche and is just there for a weapon. So he says, yeah, your hammer's done. And Hisashi brings out the hammer. And All Might grabs it. And one swing in the air, and it starts charging up with Aether. Like it normally does when you start using the hammer. You swing it, and Aether charges for each attack to do damage to the behemoths. It hits the Aether in the behemoths. And she sees it start to glow a little, so she has to shut her eye, being like, that's bright. And he goes, oh, sorry, I forgot about your condition. So he puts it away on his back, and he's like, thank you. And he walks out, and he has a good rest of the day. He's still in prime All Might condition, even though he did fight All for One. And that will come in, that effect on him will come in later. So, the effect that she had is now she could see in complete absolute darkness. So every night she's just sitting, rolling around in bed because she still sees like it's midday. So she thinks everything is still bright and her parents forgot to turn off the lights. So she walks over and flicks on off the lights every night because something's happening to her, and every time she keeps forgetting that they flick it off when they say goodnight. So one night she's like, screw this. I'm going to the forge and forging something. Because she has somewhat of a little bit of addiction to forging because her father got her into forging. So she forges a weapon, and her father wakes up the next morning and sees her forging away. And he walks up to her, and she has bags under her eyes. She's still hammering away. She's covered in sweat. And he's like, what are you doing? Did you get any sleep? And she's like, no, I couldn't. So he's like, okay. I'll finish this. You go get some sleep. She's like, I can't. I need to finish this. And he goes, okay, you can finish it later. You need sleep. And she's like, I can't. I need to finish this. there's something coming and I need this. And he's like, what do you mean there's something coming? And she goes, I don't know. I just know there's something coming. And he's like, fine, go upstairs. I'll finish it for you. It took him 30-ish minutes to finally get her up the stairs and in bed. So after a few minutes, he walks back down into the forge and he sees this weird shape. He's like, well, what? And his repeaters are still on the wall. They're raggedy and old. And he sees the home defense weapon that he has. That is attached with neutral essence. Which is literally, you could hit any behemoth with it and it'll do the exact same amount of damage to any behemoth. So, after a few hours, he walks into his house after forging in the room for a little bit. And he saw the little sketch that she made prior. And he saw what she was doing with it. And he's like, that's a good idea. Let me try that myself. And he started forging stuff into it. And he sees that the essence is already in the blade. And the most of the items are in the blade. So he's like, we don't have enough materials. I'll go into town tomorrow and finish it with her tomorrow because we don't have enough materials. This is maybe 2 more hours after that. And he hears a roar from outside his house. In Dauntless, behemoths are territorial. This is a little information about Dauntless. This is a little lore. And if one behemoth senses another behemoth that is not the same essence as it will fight that behemoth until one of them wins, and that area will be claimed by that behemoth and the essence. And this behemoth goes crazy because it senses a different essence than itself from a living creature. So it starts attacking everything it can see. And he grabs his repeaters, his old trusty repeaters, and he goes out and he starts fighting the behemoth. And the behemoth knocks the entire house down while they're fighting. Even though he tried to lure it away, it was attacking the house. And he doesn't know what it was trying to attack. And without knowing, Izumi activated an ability. She went into a portal. She's still asleep. She's having a nightmare that she's surrounded by rift stalkers. And she only knows what rift stalkers are because her father showed her a picture of a rift stalker. A dead one, but she still saw one. And she's seeing all these rift stalkers running around her and not doing anything, but attacking everybody else around her. So she's freaking out. She's having a nightmare. And she finally awakes. And she's on the rubble of something. She's on something's rubble. And she looks around and it's completely pitch black. But she can still see things. Like creatures. And she looks around and she sees actual rift stalkers. And she's starting to freak out like, where the hell am I? What the hell am I doing here? She's starting to freak out. And this rift stalker just brushes right past her. She gets hit by the rift stalker's tail and just keeps going. Not even caring. And she's like, what the hell? And she felt it too. So, oh, she stands up and she walks forward and trips and falls out of it. And when you're in the rift, walking just a few feet can send you miles. She took one step and fell out of the rift. And she was like, I want to go home. And the only place home left that she saw in the rift, because you can still see places in the rift, was the forging hut. So she went into the forging hut and she saw that her father wasn't there. So she opened the door and she saw a Gnasher stomping, jumping, and trying to crush her house after it's already down and destroyed. So she looks around and she doesn't see any weapons. She does see the spear that her father told her, or that is meant for weaponry. And she's used it a few times, and she somehow just knows how to use it after hitting something with it. After killing a aether charged animal, she just knows how to use it. And so she grabs it and she runs at the Gnasher, and she's completely drained after the hour-long fight. So she walks up to the Gnasher, who is dead, and flops down on it. And she knows that it's dead because it's lifeless, not moving. And whenever a Gnasher dies, its front teeth fall out and just fizzle away somehow. I'm just saying that. But I'm going to have to give every monster a death animation that you can visualize and they can see to make sure it's dead. So she walks up to the Gnasher and she flops down on it and passes out. And when she wakes up, she sees a few Riftstalkers walking around again. And she thinks that she's back where she was originally. And then she starts looking around even more and notices that it's nighttime. And she can see perfectly fine. And she sees that the Riftstalkers are staying away from the Gnasher. So she starts cutting up the Gnasher with the spear because she notices that the Riftstalkers aren't attacking the Gnasher or her. So she's like, maybe they won't attack me if I don't attack them? Because she knows that the Riftstalkers can easily take down a Gnasher. And then she sees something that shows her that this is a very weak Gnasher. She sees that it has its baby teeth still in. Yes, I'm making it have baby teeth. And she says, oh my god, this was a lesser Gnasher. And every hunter should be able to kill a lesser Gnasher. Unless they're on the end of their stride and they can't even kill a lesser Embermane. And you'll know what a lesser Embermane is later. So she goes and starts harvesting the fur, the skin, the last of the teeth that are there. And she sees the stomach. And how they get the ethereal essence is they go into the stomach of the creature and drain it of the fluid that's inside. And she drains it and sees all the neutral essence. So she walks over to the forge with this big bucket of neutral essence and puts it down. Has everything there and sees that the sword is almost done. So she takes the pike and it's slowly breaking apart. And she puts it on the rack again. And she's like, okay, I can't do anything with it now. I have to wait. So she starts working in the forge with the essence and the sword is done after a few hours of her reforging the sword a few times, making sure that it's perfect. She folds it, stretches it out, folds it, stretches it out a few more times, does the traditional Japanese method of making katana, and she finally starts sharpening it. It gets sharpened, and the good thing about mixing a sword or a weapon with essence makes it to where it doesn't get damaged. Ever. So when she sharpens it, she makes sure that she was using a sharpening stone that's made strictly out of essence or aether to make sure the sword was actually sharp, because she knows that they never get damaged. And she sees this, and she walks out of the building, and she sees a giant pile of dead Nashers. And she looks at the Rift Stalkers, and they're just walking back and forth from her. They give her a look and then just keep walking. And she doesn't know why they're giving her a look, but they do. So she walks by them, and she's like, okay, I need to see what's going on. Let me cut up this and see if I could feed a Rift Stalker. And she sees a baby Rift Stalker and sees that it's trying to tear at this Nasher. So she cuts up the piece that it's trying to get at, and she cuts up the piece and feeds it to the baby Rift Stalker. And Rift Stalkers, when they're born, they're just left there to hunt for themselves. So are Nashers, Shrikes, Skarns, Drasks, Embermanes, and all the rest of the behemoths. They just have to fend for themselves. And they're omnivores, all of them. I'm making them all omnivores so they can actually survive. And they all are omnivores. So they grow up tasting plants and aether. And when they get older, they are territorial. And whenever something does come in their territory that is not part of their essence family, they immediately attack it. But if it's not the same creature as them, but it's in their essence family, they don't immediately attack it unless it immediately attacks them. So she feeds the little creature, and the little creature gets attached to her because she's feeding it. It takes it from her, and she starts caring for it. And we skip a few months, and it's grown to half the size of a normal Rift Stalker. So it's the size of a puma at this point, because a normal Rift Stalker is the size of a bear, maybe 2 horses. I don't really know, but it looks like a giant rat, dog, bear thingy. So she starts hunting the Nashers that come on their property, because normally whenever there's a creature on the property, the alarms go off, but apparently the alarms are destroyed. At some point, the alarms got destroyed by something. And they weren't normal alarms, they're aether alarms. Or something turned them off. And she goes around checking the alarms. And she made the Rift Stalker that she was protecting, she made it vomit up some aether with its particular essence code in it. And she scanned hers, because apparently she set it off at one point by dropping it on her, and the alarm went off. That's why All Might came. So they changed it, and they turned it off. And that's why the Nasher got in, because they turned it off, and they were looking away for it to stop going off whenever she wakes up or falls asleep. And by this point, she's learned to use her abilities. So she can portal. She can portal warp. She can go aether charged, which is very taxing on her. And her strength and speed are increased at night. So the aether alarms only go off when they don't sense certain aether signatures. And she finally turns it on after 6 months of running around, and all the rift stalkers hear the alarm go off and immediately jump into the rift, except for the one rift stalker that she's with, which she's named. You guys name it. In the comments, you name what her rift stalker is going to be named. So every once in a while, because she now needs to find a way to feed herself, and she's turned off the forge completely, except for the hammer that she just made out of dead rift stalkers, because she started to hunt rift stalkers, because she can stand the sight of rift stalkers more than neutral, flame, ice, earth, or shock, or even radiant. She can stand the sight of umbral essence more than the rest of them. So she made a umbral hammer for right now. And she sees this old metal door that hasn't been opened in years. And she finally breaks it open after hours, and Nezu finally sees the alarm signature go off again, and he sends Aizawa out to check it out. And she's currently down in the area with her little stalker buddy. And no, the stalker's name is not going to be Buddy. It's going to be female. Depending on what the creature's name is, depends on if it's female or not. And yes, I'm going to make her befriend 2 different umbral creatures. And the second umbral creature's either yours, the either escalation boss or the bird. That's your that's your decisions. The escalation boss or the bird. And I'll look up the escalation boss's race or behemoth type, whatever you want to call it, after this. So I'm going to put 2 polls up on my community tab. The name of the escalation boss, which is probably going to be weirdly named, or Shroud, the crow looking bird. She already has a rift stalker, which you guys will name. It's either a Shroud or the escalation boss, which I'll put in the poll. Choose that, and then after that, scroll it down because I'm probably going to post the name first. Choose a name for both creatures. Now in the comments, choose a name for both creatures. And I'll only take the comments that have both names at once. Well, let's get back into this. So, she looks around and she sees a very slight burn to the essence in a certain bucket, and she sees a few scales from something that have absolutely no essence left in them. And she walks toward this and she feels heat coming from this bucket. And she's like, oh, that's flame essence. And she looks at this bucket and she sees the flame essence. It looks like there's a fire in the bucket. So she looks at the scales. And she looks at the scales for a while and she notices that they're Helion scales. So she's like, okay, this is Helion scales. What should I do with this? And she remembers a little talk she had with her father, who was saying that Helions have the ability to deal more damage, blunt damage, than any other scale. Even though they're best in sharp weapons, they deal more blunt damage than any other scale. She's like, ooh, I should make a hammer. So she takes the 20 scales that are there and the two buckets, the two flame essence buckets, and takes it up. And she sees all the materials she needs to make the hammer and maybe another hammer if she messes up the first time. So she tries to make this hammer and she fails. And she's like, what did I do wrong? Because the hammer literally went boom when she added the first clip into it. She made the hammer, she did everything, and she added the clip with aether bottles in it, which aether bottles are able to recharge whenever you land an aether charge combo on the enemy to increase its damage and to increase itself and recharge itself. So she sees this as a complete failure. So she starts taking apart the mechanism, and she sees that she put something wrong in it. So she remakes it with the correct ratio in it, or whatever it was. I'm not going to even attempt to understand what they did to make a hammer like that. So she makes it correctly, and she starts swinging it. And since the scales were completely out of essence, flame essence, they lit back on fire when she started combining them. So the scales glow, but the rest of the hammer doesn't glow. So she can easily see what she's doing, instead of it shining bright like her umbral weapon does. But since she can't see umbral essence with her right eye at all, even though it's being affected by radiant essence. Yes, I'm making that a little thing. It's gotten a lot cleaner. And by this time, Aizawa has checked on them and saw that the doctor, his hut's destroyed, and the rest of the, even though the doctor was pretty much right next to it, it was destroyed by rift stalkers, so no one noticed until it was too late. So like, that's already destroyed. Oh well. Happens to pretty much everybody in here. They lose a family member once in a while. And he checked the main building, and he found the forges quenched and the house destroyed. So he went back to Nezu saying that it's bad news. We skip 6 months, and her entire look has changed. She had dark black hair, and now her hair is white. Pure white. And instead of having normal eyes, she has pinkish eyes, like this picture. And her rift stalker is fully grown. So it's been a year since her parents died. And every once in a while the alarms go off. And Nezu says, can you go check it? Because apparently the alarm system's still on. And I'd like to at least keep it pristine for the people who've passed on that land. And Aizawa goes, sure thing, I'll make a watch to keep a monitor on the alarm system. And I'll turn this section off. Whenever it goes off, I'll go hunting for them, since I can see when behemoths are around and when they're not. That's important too. When he can see when behemoths are around. He can't see her rift stalker because she normally keeps him in the rift, which means he can run to any point in time, at any point in time. He can't really time travel, but if she's currently at UA, she can send him to her house, grab something, and get back to UA immediately. And she leaves all of her stuff in the rift. All of her weapons, all of her clothes, because she's fished out a few of her clothes. And she hasn't grown very much, so she's still short. And Aizawa sees somebody. This is the middle of, this is the middle of the 10 months. So Aizawa sees her and goes, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And she goes, "I live here." And he goes, "What's your name?" And she goes, "Izumi Midoriya." And he goes, "What?" And she goes, "Yeah. My dad was Hisashi Midoriya. My mom was Inko Midoriya." And he goes, "You've been dead." And she goes, "Did you ever find my body?" And he goes, "No. We thought a behemoth ate you guys." And she goes, "Well, a behemoth did, but then I killed it. Then I turned on the alarm system, and it's been keeping away everything, except for friggin' rift stalkers." And at that point, her friend comes barreling in with a dead Shrike, and she says, "Good buddy," and actually says her name, because it is a female rift stalker. And Aizawa gets on guard, and her friend that sees Aizawa gets on guard too, and she goes, "Down, don't you dare attack him." And so it sits like a dog and just starts wagging its tail like a dog. And it just sits next to Izumi. And it's become very close friends with Izumi, following Izumi's orders, as long as Izumi feeds it and gives it attention every once in a while. So I was like, whoa. You tamed a behemoth? And she goes, "No, I befriended a behemoth. There's a difference. Tamed is I made it follow every one of my commands. Watch. Go kill him." And it jumps at her, and it jumps at Aizawa, and she goes, "Stop." And it stops in its tracks and runs back. She goes, "I didn't tell her to run back. She prefers me over you. And watch this. Go say hi to him." And the Rift Stalker just doesn't move, and he goes, and she goes, "Exactly. I didn't tame it. If I tamed it, it would have went and said hi to you. So, first off, it's not an it is a girl. So, she is not tamed. She is my friend, and she will be going everywhere with me." And he sees the light pink eyes, and he goes, "Are you really a Midoriya?" And she goes, "Yeah. And I know exactly where you got that weapon." And she points at the current weapon on his back, and he goes, "Okay. What element are these?" And she goes, "Well, since I am the one who first designed strikers and gave it to my father to attempt to make, those are the prototype strikers that I made with my father that are radiant, and can you please put them away? They're currently blinding." And he goes, "They're not blinding." And she goes, "Yes, they are. You have them equipped. They're currently blinding me. Can you please put them away?" And her Rift Stalker friend has its eyes shut because she was told to sit and stay, but she doesn't like the look of radiant weapons. So he puts them on his back, and they lock into place so they don't channel Aether. And she goes, "Thank you." And he goes, "Why did you say my weapons are blinding?" And she goes, "Well, radiant weapons have a negative effect on any umbral behemoth. And I was affected by umbral essence. That's all I know." And he goes, "Well," and she goes, "Don't you dare. I want to stay here for another 1 month." And he goes, "You can't." And she goes, "I want to stay here. I'll go tell Nezu myself, but I want to stay here." And he goes, You can't tell Nezu yourself. And she goes, yeah, I can. You want to know how? And she waves her hand and a portal opens. And she goes, I'll see you in a minute. So she walks into the portal shuts, and her friend followed her. And she says, sorry, but can you keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't go through any of my stuff like bandits would? And she walks out of the portal, and the portal shuts behind her again. And she just stares at Aizawa. Just staring. And whenever Aizawa moves, she growls at him. And he's like, okay. And he sits down and just stays there. And he knows that he can't pull his weapons fast enough before the Rift Stalker's on top of him, biting his head off. So at Nezu's office, a Rift Stalker portal opens up, and the entire UA alarm goes off. And Izumi walks in, and Nezu's freaking out, like, who are you? What have you done? And she goes, well, I'm a Midoriya, and I was affected by Rift Stalker abilities. I apparently have Rift Stalker abilities. Oh, and Shroud abilities. And that one slug thing abilities. I've never seen my father make any of those weapons, so I wouldn't know what it is. And he goes, no, you're not Izumi. Izumi's human. And she goes, God damn it. And she throws something at him and walks back through the portal. And the alarms stop going off because the behemoth left and isn't coming back. We go back to Aizawa, and it's been like a minute, maybe two. And he wanted to sit on the bench that's next to the forge, but if he moved one step, she would growl at him. If he tried to lay down, she'd growl at him. So he just sat there. Literally, he sat down and didn't lay down. And a portal opens up next to her, and Izumi walks out saying, well, Nezu wants to hunt me down. I threw him a note. Hopefully he understands. He goes, but how? No one's been able to get abilities. And she goes, well, my ability was originally the ability to gain weapon proficiency. And everybody's born with a different weapon proficiency. You know this. You know how it works. Everybody has different abilities with their weapons and their proficiencies. I'm able to use every weapon. And he goes, no. That's impossible. And she goes, well, it helps to be a Forge Master's daughter. And since I had the most powerful Forge Master as my father, it does help. And he goes, okay. So why can you go to the rift? And he's still freaking out a little, but he's calm most of the time. She goes, well, apparently the umbral energy or essence, whatever you want to call it, that I kind of dropped in my eye has fused with me to, what is it? Give me these abilities. And currently her eyes are changing right in front of him. And I'll be right back. Her eyes are changing. And, yes, her eyes do look like that because she's cried for a really long time and they've left marks on her face that haven't gone away. Her eyes are currently changing. They were pinkish when he started to look at her, and now he starts to see a galaxy appear and it's slowly shifting. And she's like, oh god, it's happening again. And he goes, what's happening? And she goes, well, it looks like the Radiant Behemoth abilities are also fusing with me. So it looks like I'm going to be able to resist Radiant Behemoths, but I can't use any of their abilities. Still freaking hate the sight of radiant behemoths. And Aizawa's like, okay. We need to get you to UA to get tested. And she goes, if I step on UA grounds, the alarm's going to go off. It just did when I appeared in front of Nezu and came back. And 15 military trucks roll up. Tons of heroes/slayers get out, and Izumi whistles and her friend goes into the rift, and everybody looks at Izumi, and they have 3 different caged behemoths to test if there's a behemoth nearby, and they start freaking out because they know this is an alpha behemoth that they can't deal with. And it's currently becoming sundown, too. And Nezu walks out and says, "You're a behemoth." And she goes, "No." They react to essence, and apparently the human essence I have has fused with the radiant and the umbral essence I've had injected into me. So yeah, they're wrong. And he goes, "Okay, then what weapon did I order?" And she goes, "Well, since my father never tells me the orders or who they go to, what time?" And he goes, 10 years ago. And she goes, "I was 3 then." Well, technically I was... Well, those are the 3 years I finally remembered. So, if you can't give me the time and date when he left to give it to you, I can't tell you what weapon it was. And he goes, "Okay. It was blank, blank, and blank." And she goes, "Oh, you're that Striker's dude. Oh." And I was like, okay, hold on. I got my Strikers 11 years ago. And she goes, yeah. Nezu? And he looks at her and he goes, "Yes." And she goes, "Those Strikers are made out of Shroud and Riftstalker parts." And he pulls out his little Strikers, because he's short but he's built. He pulls out his Strikers, and he goes, "Okay. And what are they good against?" And she goes, "Oh, that's easy. Every Slayer hunter hero knows, or Slayer slash hero knows that Umbral's good against Radiant. And I especially asked my father to add a little something into that to give you an extra boost against another behemoth that you currently have to deal with pretty much every day. And that is a Boreas." So I put in a little bit of Embermane into there to help with the Boreas problem. And he goes, you're not lying." And she goes, "Why would I? I helped make those. Why would I lie about those?" And he goes, "Only 2 people knew the specs. Hizashi, and he said his daughter helped make it. So only them knew the specs." Oh, and she goes, "Oh, and my mother. My mother knew the specs too. But she knows to never talk about the creations of me or him around anybody, unless we specifically say you can." So she never talked about any Slayer weapon that we made ever, unless we started talking about it. And then she started saying how proud we were, and she starts reminiscing about the good times, and then she starts crying. And since her other friend can see outside the rift while she's in the rift, because Izumi can't, but her friend can, because she's a rift stalker she could see outside the rift while she's in the rift. So she gets out, she comes out of the rift and she starts nuzzling up with Izumi. And everybody gets on guard again. And she hops on her friend, she hugs her friend, and her friend runs off. 5 hours later, Aizawa's still sitting there. And they're all like, "What? Why aren't you moving?" And he goes, "Well, if I move, that stalker's going to chew my head off. I haven't gotten permission from Izumi to leave." And they're all like, "Just leave." And he stands up and he takes one step, and all of a sudden they hear growling. And they go, never mind. And they go, okay, so it's either the Rift Stalker's keeping an eye on us, and someone gets in the front of the vehicle, and all of a sudden all the tires and the engine get a puncture in them. And they're like, okay, so the Stalker doesn't want us to leave until we get an okay from Izumi. This is going to be difficult. So they all sit down, and the person in the car gets out of the car and just sits down right next to the door. And another hour passes, and Izumi finally gets back saying, "Sorry about that, I had another episode." And they go, "It's okay, you lost your parents." And she goes, No, I lost everybody. I don't consider that jerk All Might a friend, nor do I consider him a family friend. And they're like, what do you mean? And she goes, well, I know All Might's true personality. And Nezu flinches at this, and she goes, you do too, don't you? And he goes, yeah. Oh, God. And she goes, yeah. Doesn't help that he offered to get 3 behemoths, full behemoths too, of the hardest type to kill for me. He was trying to buy me off for my parents. And Aizawa hears this and goes, whoa, what? And she goes, yeah, apparently he wants a great successor like that jerk Endeavor, but at least Endeavor isn't trying to seduce the blacksmith's friggin' daughter. And they go, so we have a proposition for you. And she goes, I'm already trying to go to UA, so there's nothing you can offer me to leave unless you are willing to keep my little friend here a secret. And she pats her friend who's currently behind her, and they go, she's not quite little, but we're willing to keep her a secret. And she goes, if you haven't seen a fully grown male Rift Stalker, you'll know that this one's little. And she's currently just a foot taller than Izumi when she's standing on all fours, but when she's sitting on her butt, she's 1.5 foot taller. And she's 2 Izumis long when she's straight from tail to head. So her tail's really long. And they're all like, okay then. Well, the entrance exams is kind of killing a behemoth, and we kind of do Rift Stalkers. And she goes, we've feasted on Rift Stalkers before. And they go, what? And she goes, yeah. I had to upgrade my dad's axe, so I kind of needed Rift Stalker parts. So we started killing the Rift Stalkers that made this their home till 6 months ago. And I've just been killing all the animals here since. And I go, so that's why there's no animals on this property anymore. And she goes, no, that's why. And as long as you keep feeding me Behemoth, because Behemoth's good, especially if you cook it right. And they go, behemoth's bad for you. And she goes, what? No. And her mouth starts watering because she's thinking about behemoth meat. Yeah, making her very behemoth-like now. And she goes, crap, I'm hungry again. So she whistles in a low whistle, and her friend runs into the rift and grabs a rift stalker carcass that's currently hiding in the rift, because they kind of found a rift stalker in the rift when, yeah. So she kind of puts it together that rift stalker meat's not good for you unless you are part rift stalker or any part behemoth. And she goes, oh crap. Behemoth meat, feed me it, and I'll join UA. And you'll have no fuss from her either. And they all look at the rift stalker, and she just jumps up and down because rift stalker meat cooked. She likes it. So everybody is just staring at this rift stalker and Izumi, and I'm gonna end it there. So I did world building. I did her character building. Oh, somewhat character building. I'll probably finish it in the next video. So I'm going to be putting out the poll tomorrow. I'll be putting out the behemoth poll later. Because yes, I want her to have 2 pets, one a shroud and then one either one a shroud or the other umbral. And yes, I'm only having her tame umbrals. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Talk to you guys later. If you guys have lasted this long, consider subscribing, liking, and in the comments say forging or blacksmith. If you guys made it this long, I'll immediately heart the ones that say that. And if you do say that in the answer column for the Discord, I'll immediately pay you 500 credits, because we've gotten it fixed. The bots are done. They're fixed for now. Crossing my fingers that they stay fixed. So yeah, points are back. Ship tickets. So you can, if you have enough points, you can use them on if you have enough points, you can use on ship tickets and change the ship for this one, or change the ship for Mist and Voice, and also you can use it on Vampire if you want, or on back burner stories at all. You can use it on them. So you can use the ship ticket if any 3 people agree and the admins pull you into a different into a Discord call, or you guys join a Discord call with all the admins in it, and we hear your explanation of why this would be a good ship for this. I might add it to the ship, or I may change the ship completely. So remember, ship tickets are really good, and it'll also keep you guys involved with the Discord, because every time you send a message for Discord, you get like 1 or 2 points. So if you are just on the Discord constantly, you will rack up points quickly. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Remember, say forge or blacksmith in the comments. So yeah, talk to you guys later. Bye.